We're live. Let's make some noise. And we'll get to the first question because you guys are here first before anybody else. Jeremy wants to know, what's up, Richard? I have a 2011 6-liter. I want to order the sloppy stage 2 cam, but it says it's for a Gen 3. Can I put that in my engine? I just won't have EVT. Yeah, you're going to have to get rid of EVT with that camshaft, but that cam will work fine in your Gen 4. Hopefully the connection's better. Let me see what my signal is showing. It's okay. I'm like 3 bars, so it's obviously not ideal, but it's, good-ish. But we have a lot of cool stuff to talk about tonight. If you could take a look over there, you can see in the back of my truck, there's a motor there. Over here, motor hanging, hanging on the lift, on the hoist. And then we have our broken one back here. Hopefully you guys all took a look at the video that I posted today, because I actually shot that this morning. So that was almost like real time. It was almost live. My buddy Mark Sanchez and I went, thank you, Mark. My buddy Mark Sanchez and I went to the junkyard today, and instead of just taking the motor out, even though we thought it was probably good because it was in a motor, it was in a that had been crashed and it had been rolled over or up on its lid at least once. It was not shiny side up. So we thought it was probably good. And if you watch the video, you got to see us go through the through all the trials and tribulations of trying to make that thing. We were trying to do a compression test in the wrecking yard, so we had to go borrow a battery. We brought jumper cables and we brought the compression tester and the sorted tools to try to get the thing to work. Although I did have to use a 15 or 16 millimeter because I forgot my 5/8 spark plug socket. But you're at the wrecking yard. You got to do what you got to do. So we were able to do that, but what we found out is from the thing being upside down that it filled itself full of oil. So when we did when we initially did the first cranking before we took any of the plugs out, it didn't want to turn over. So we're like, oh, let's hang on a second. Maybe it's got water in it. Maybe it cracked something. Maybe it hurt the motor when it was in the crash. But after taking all the coil packs off and taking all the spark plugs out, and then we turned it over, you could see just fountains of oil coming out. So this thing was probably upside down. The nice thing about that is, and a lot of guys pointed out in the comments, that when these things roll over, they have inertia switches that shuts the fuel pump off so the motor stops running, which is good because we don't want the thing to run without oil. They don't run very well upside down. They don't like to go, as the airplane guys say, they don't like to go inverted, which is not ever good. But we ended up doing a compression test, and I can tell you this, that when you put a bunch of oil in there, the compression's really, really high. It spun the gauge all the way around, so how much ever that is, I'm going to put this up here so I don't have to keep reaching for it. It spun the gauge all the way around, so it had all the compression. But the motor looks like it's sound, and just because we went through all of that trouble with that motor and the fact that it already had the transmission gone from it, it made for an easy pull. So our guy there that did all the work for pulling it, all we did really is the compression test, because I had to get back and try to take this one apart, this Dodge 360, and do a compression test on it. I did buy a warranty on that one because I just wanted to make sure that it was kind of a runner. It looks like it's going to be okay. I did a compression test. There are a couple that are low, but a lot of times this stuff, when you run it, it comes back in. So I want to see, and even if I have to take it apart and take it down to L&R and have them do a valve job and do a hone and a surface and all that stuff, that's not really a big deal. I want to make sure that the motor is in good shape and it's in good condition, and it's repeatable, so that when I do testing with it and nothing will be hurt, it'll be fine. So I want to make sure that obviously that it's nice and repeatable when we do the upgrades or when we do the piston flipping. So we want to make sure that it's perfectly repeatable on every run. If we run at the same, air temperature, oil temperature, and water temperature, same air, fuel, and timing and all that. Plus, I want to see, I've never run one, so I'm kind of curious to see what they look like in terms of the power curve with this beer keg induction system on there, and kind of curious to see what that throttle body flows, how much power it will support and stuff. So it'll be interesting. Actually, we're going to take all the accessories off, and I did get a warranty on the accessories, so I'm going to take those back. Because now there's no more. It used to be that when you go to the wrecking yard that I go to, you just buy a complete motor, and it comes with all of that stuff. It comes from basically the flex plate all the way up, including the fan and everything, the oil pan, the throttle body in this case, or a carburetor, all of that stuff. And now they've changed and since went to a different a different pricing scheme that makes it not quite as affordable. So I'm working on that one, and hopefully I'm hoping to run that one at least once just to find out what it is before I have to go back home. And I'm hoping to get that motor, the one that's in my truck. We'll walk over there and take a look at it in just a second. That one is a 2005. This one is a 2006 that's not working. And like I said, that one has compression, the 05 one. So it'll be interesting to run that. I'm hoping we can get that up maybe tonight and tomorrow and maybe, like, you know, make some noise for tomorrow. That would be cool. But we also want to talk about this is one of the turbos that the guys from Max Speeding sent me. They sent me a couple of I think they're GT30 76s. So we want to run those for the guys at Max Speeding. And what I wanted to do, what I was really concerned about, is I wanted to kind of compare those to the GT35 82s that they had sent previously and get an idea, because, you know, if we're going to recommend, we recommend the GT35 stuff for twins at 1,000 horsepower or for a single at 500 horsepower and lower. And they seem to work. We've run them a lot on you know, higher horsepower Honda stuff, on 500 or 550 horsepower Honda stuff, and they work real good on the smaller motors. It's not a great turbo for a single turbo like a 4.8 or a 5.3. It's kind of too small for that. So most of those guys would step up to the GT45 size turbo. I mean, there's a lot. I always talk about that, but there are a lot of other turbos that will fit that bill. It's just that a lot of guys go to that because it's so inexpensive, and it's a good way to go. So we size them accordingly. But I want to see how it might be interesting for a guy looking for maybe 700 or 800 horsepower to look at that, the GT30 76s. And so I want to see, you know, how they respond and how much power they'll support and stuff. So it'll be interesting to run those. I haven't run a lot of the Max Speeding stuff. I've only run 2 of their turbos, excuse me, although they, a lot of guys sell the GT35s, and I've run those previously also, way back. And I think that the ones we ran before were from the guys at CX Racing. But like I said, there are a lot of people that run that particular turbo. I haven't run a bunch of different versions of that turbo from a bunch of different suppliers. So I don't know if they are indeed different. I know that a true Garrett one is different than a lot of the offshore pieces. But, you know, if you're looking for that kind of power level, those things are certainly affordable, and they seem to work pretty well. I've never had any problems with them. I've only ever had a problem with one turbo seizing up, and that was not one of these. So I've had pretty good luck. But again, I don't run them out on the street for 100,000 miles like, you know, some guys might. But heck, I figure, because, you know, coming up with the 5-liter Mustang stuff, you know, turbo kits were kind of voodoo magic back then. And there weren't a lot of like affordable turbo kits. Turbo kits were fairly expensive, and it was much harder to do. And then now to see how easy it is, and if you have a turbo that costs a couple $100 and you run it for a year and it goes bad, you know, a lot of guys spend more than that when they go out for dinner and stuff. So, you know, that's not inexpensive, as long as it obviously doesn't take out the motor with it. But that's why you run an intercooler as a screen to catch all the debris. But again, like I said, I've those T76s that we ran on the Big Bang motors. Those things are still alive, and that was back in 2010 or 2011. So they're still running and still making boost, doing what they're supposed to do. So what do you guys got going on? Let's see. The Magnum engines have very long runners. This is Jeremy. From what I've heard, they start to drop off when you get much over 4,500. Yeah, they look like they're long runners, and that would be typical of that era of performance motor. If you look at what they're designed to do, especially in a truck, that's what you'd want. You would want lots and lots of low-speed power, and that's what it would do. So I would imagine I'm going to do a comparison between that and a dual plane, a carbureted dual plane, because a lot of guys might choose that motor to put in an earlier Mopar. And I want to show them what they would get if they did that. And my suspicion is it might be a little bit like when you take a tune port small block and take the tune port stuff off and put a dual plane carburetor on there. You pick up quite a bit of power. So it'll be interesting. You know, I love testing new stuff that I've never tested before, and that will be interesting. I suspect, again, if it's really, really long runner like the tune port stuff, that a lot of modifications that you do are not going to show dramatic changes, because It's all tuned to be running, you know, power below 5,000 RPM. Dark Blaze, what's going up? I plan to do a 4200 swap in my 87 Supra. Nice. I'm going to use the whole set HX40 from a Freightliner. That turbo will work good. As long and the thing about have them being the diesel turbos is that they should last a long time. I've run a lot of whole sets. I haven't run that particular one. We ran a lot of whole set stuff back when I was doing stuff with Jimmy and Nathan from HP Performance, because they ran that in a lot of their kits, and we had real good luck with them, and they made lots of power, and lots of guys were going really fast with those. So I haven't run that particular one because I haven't got a lot of anymore. I haven't gotten a lot of turbos from the wrecking yard because the other stuff is just so cheap. But if you have one, that will work just fine. It will make boost, and it will do the stuff that it's supposed to do. Let's see, just got my VA Specialties shock relocation. My goal of a modern muscle truck with my 2000 Sierra Stepside 6-liter is getting close to fruition. What do you think? 410s or go 430s? I think, Craig, that's going to more depend on your tire size. Did you put your tire size on there? If you're going to go with a really big tire, is it going to be a muscle truck? So if it's going to be more of a street strip kind of thing, you probably won't need the 430s. But if you're going to put a really big tire on it, like an off-road kind of deal, then more gear probably will help you. Jeremy has a 5.2 in the Grand Cherokee. Nice. ProCharge Mopar. I got my Magnum dual plane Speedmaster air gap style for $135 on Black Friday. Nice. That's a good deal. Noodles, you're right. The HX40 is really old tech, but the thing is with turbo stuff, if you put a turbo on there and it makes boost, you know, like I said, good things are going to happen with boost. And it doesn't matter that that's not a good wheel design or any of that stuff. For if you're talking about having an NA motor and then all of a sudden you have a boosted motor, the improved technology doesn't take you a whole bunch beyond that. If you're trying to make a drag race car, then you want to do that. But if you've got a street or even a street strip car and that's a free turbo or it's a really cheap turbo, I highly recommend that kind of stuff. Yeah, let me check the connection here. Might be a little better. Yeah, that's still looking okay. I don't have all the bars, but we're outside. It seems to be better than being in the console room. So we're outside in the main hallway. VS Racing 7875, the Gen 2. I have one of those. Those work good. Shout out to Viren out there. I've used it on a number of things, all the way from the K24 Honda, all the way up to 6-liter stuff. So it has a fairly broad range, and that's what I'm talking about. Is a lot of guys want, okay, well, you got to have this turbo because it's a 2-liter, and you know the back pressure is going to be high and all that stuff. And this one is more modern, and this one's better wheel design, and all of that stuff. But the thing is, if you take a turbo like that 7875 Gen 2 and put it on a Honda, it makes good power. If you put it on a 4.8, it makes good power, or a 5.3, or a 6.0, or a 6.2. It's a 1,000 horsepower turbo. Now it'll probably do a little bit better on the on a smaller motor, which is kind of typical on a single deal because the back pressure gets high. But only if you reach a point where you run out of hot side flow before you run out of cold side flow. If you run out of both of them at the same time and you have that displacement, that combination of displacement and power output, and you run out of both at the same time, that's kind of an ideal situation. Boosted Lifestyle, are you a fan of big turbine wheels? More so on a single than on twins, but yeah. But not on a on a 4-cylinder application. You'd want the hot side a little bit smaller. Boosted, are you still 8 turboing your deal? I haven't checked. The last time I was looking at it, you did the intercooler stuff. Has that thing made crazy 8 turbo power yet? What's going on with Scuba Sam? Thanks for the offer, Rick. You've got a CID intake. I've never tried one of those. We've tried a lot of the single plane intakes, like the split mast one and the Super Victor and the Trick Flow one. And the single planes, you know, they're kind of similar. I don't know that I have a motor that could take advantage of what that CID can do. Max horsepower on a stock Mark IV block before webbing or core shifting starts. I don't know. We've done 1,000 horsepower with Mark IV blocks without too much of a problem. But again, what we do on the dyno and what you could do out on the track a whole bunch of times is a different deal. Yeah, Kyle's in the house. Nope, the 8 turbo deal is coming off. Nice. Single 88-103. Okay, that would be a good combination. Forge bottom end. Wow. KO3s were dying out. Apparently, they don't like 35 pounds boost. That seems like a lot. I don't know why you'd have to run that much pressure to, let's see. Dark Blaze, thank you very much. I got to read your comment here. Also for Rocky Mountain Raceway this year in rear-wheel drive, swapping in an 02 Cavalier with an LR37 and an AR5 from a Colorado using an HE55. That'll be a cool combination. Is the 3, is that the 5-cylinder? I think it is. Boosted, let me know if you need anything for your buildup. I got, you know, sometimes I have stuff laying around here. Oh, cool. Calvin's in the house. Hey, 7875 is my vote. If it's a foot brake car and you need something that will spool quick, I would recommend something smaller, but for the dyno, 7875 is the way to go. Yeah, it'll, because we have an artificial load on it, it will spool up. What I want to try are some different turbos. We want to, we're obviously going to, we have to try the GT45 just because we have it and it's cheap, and we have to run that because we have to run that on everything. Because I've also run that on the Honda and then 4.8s and 5.3s and 6.0s and big blocks and all kinds of stuff. So we have to run that one. And I'm wondering if I should try something even smaller than that, like maybe a GT35. So that will be interesting. But definitely these bigger turbos will be kind of cool to see. The other one that I might do is I have that S475 T6 from Summit. So we might try that as well, and to see how responsive or unresponsive that is. The nice thing about the setup that we made that Jason from JT Fab did, the exhaust manifold, it'll just allows us to put the adapter on and run kind of whatever turbo we want on there. Todd wants to know, what would the limit of a 6.6 liter cast iron LT1 block be with the forged internals? Are you talking about the an LT1, like a modern LT1? Isn't that a 6.2 liter? Or are you talking about the 6.6 truck version? I think that those blocks are pretty strong. LLR is the 5-cylinder version. I really want to run those just because it's a 5-cylinder. Well, with the 8 turbos, we had to back feeding issues. Yeah, we ran into that when we did 2 turbos on the when Tom and I were doing the Volkswagen Land Speed Record with the GSR Beetle. We had to run another turbo because the class that we were in had a single pipe coming out of the way that they do their head as they merge everywhere, and it has a common exit for all of the exhaust ports. And so we had a tube coming off of that, split into a Y, and then into 2 turbos. And we tried 2 turbos, and then we went smaller on one of them, and then the other one was back feeding because it just we couldn't get them to light off. So it was kind of not a good idea, but it was kind of fun. Let's see. So it made 35 pounds on the sensor, but it was blowing back through the compressor wheels on some turbos. Yeah, that's not good when they're fighting themselves. We did run into that. Project Iron Ore, if 14.7 pounds of boost doubles the horsepower on E85, what percentage less do you make on 93? Well, here's the problem with doing that math on 93. You can't do that directly because you can never run enough timing to make the kind of power that you're supposed to make when you have enough timing and when you have E85. So you're going to make on 93, you can make all the NA power because you can run, like when we run these motors on the engine dyno, almost no NA motor we can't, unless it's a 15-to-1 NA motor, but anything that's 10-to-1 or 11-to-1 or whatever, we can run full timing on the NA motor, so we can get all of the NA power out of it. But you can't run 14.7 pounds of boost on that motor on pump gas. So you'll never be anywhere near the formula with that. But with E85, not only does the E85 itself add power even at the same timing, now you can add timing. So it's not unusual for E85 to be 100 or even 200 horsepower more than pump gas. Let's see. Would long tube headers perform better than manifolds on a remote turbo? Maybe. I haven't tested that to tell you absolutely, but I suspect that they do. I tried to do a test on that back when I was doing a bunch of Honda stuff here. We ran a long tube header on it. But my testing was not conclusive. I wasn't detailed enough to really get an honest answer about that. I think that headers would be the way to go, but I don't know that for sure. And I also don't know at what length they need to be. Mostly when you see guys run in race configurations, IndyCar, Formula One, those kinds of things, when you see them doing what they're doing, a lot of times they don't run the same length header that you would run on a full race naturally aspirated motor. So it leads me to believe that either they're not worried or want the same kind of power curve that you would get from the longer runners, or that they're more concerned with maybe something else like response, or maybe they're trying to raise the RPM with it. There could be a lot of things going on. I haven't talked to an engineer that would be able to tell me answers like that. I hate the fact that the whole 4200, Jeremy says, is put together with gray silicone, but I love the 4200 for serviceability. Yeah, I really like the LS in that way. I like the front cover and rear cover and valley cover and all that stuff, and the oil pan, because you can just take it apart and put it back together, and you can do that almost forever. Calvin, I have a GT 3582 on the Studebaker. Nice, spools excellently. Would be very interesting to see if the optimal cam angle is different with a more restrictive turbine versus less restrictive. That's the thing that you would get into, Calvin. It would be interesting to see if we put a smaller turbo on it and it was more responsive and maybe it started to fall off, if you could maybe help that or hinder that a little bit with cam timing. And I would like to kind of see that. I don't think that it would be a lot, because I think ultimately the turbo is going to dictate, it's going to multiply the power the way that we expect it to. But as you start to run out of airflow from the turbo, maybe you can help that a little bit. Todd, the brand new truck 6.6, the block itself, I think unless you're trying to do 2,000 horsepower or some crazy number, for the level that we always talk about, I don't think you'd hurt the block. Yeah, Rick, Leslie, check out the video that I just posted. We did a compression test at the wrecking yard on the 05 motor that we picked up. It was a lot of fun. We had geysers coming up and all kinds of crazy stuff. Scuba, I haven't seen your question yet. Do I keep missing it? What's going on? So you're having a bad shop moment here, Scuba? Let's see. Steve wants to know what size turbo for an LQ4 for the daily driver uses. The GT45 is always the go-to thing for that kind of, that's up to 700 horsepower. It's going to be fairly responsive on a 6-liter. If you want to make, you can't go really beyond that on a 6-liter. 700 horsepower at the flywheel is kind of about the limit of that turbo on that size motor. But it will be a lot of fun. Take a look at the video that I did on the stock cam 4.8 liter, and you'll see that even with a stock cam, when you add boost to it, you elevate it, the whole curve looks awesome, and it's very responsive and stuff. Okay, okay. Let's see. If you were to compound a 6 liter, what turbos, gas? Jeremy, why would you want to compound turbo something with 93 octane? That's a really bad idea. What size offshore eBay turbo? I think we went over that, right? That's the GT45. Craig, doesn't it have an overdrive gear? The truck I drive hits 40 pounds of boost. So that must be a diesel then, right, David? Yeah, a pair of GT35s are pretty cheap. Budweiser, or what is it? A Yuengling? I don't know what that is, Jeremy. I don't drink beer. I'm not a beer guy, so I'm more of a dark dark liquid. And clear too. They both work. Brian, hey Richard, I need some advice on some 706 heads. Don't use them. They're terrible. You need 243 heads or 799 heads on everything. Noodles, this one right here, he wants to know what engine is behind me. This is a 2006, and the one over there in my truck is a 2005. You know, we mix and match. Oh, you're not messing my stuff up. Troy's in the house. To select header tube length and diameter, you need to remember the compensate for the temperature and pressure, so a turbo long tube header is going to be shorter than NA. That's interesting. Stephen wants to know back-to-back camshaft tests from BTR on the Gen 5 LT1. What back-to-back camshaft do you want to? I already posted one of them, right? We ran the stock one, and then we ran a couple of the BTR stuff, right? So what is it exactly you want to see, Stephen? I only have 2 likes. What's going on? Tyler has a Barra plenum. I don't have the head flange, but I'm willing to donate it to the Barra side of things. What motor did it come off of, Tyler? And I'll see. I don't know if I need that or not, but I appreciate the offer. Let's see. Yeah, I hope the rod bearings are good on the 052, Mark. Jeremy, I hear you. Yeah, David, that's what I figured. 40 pounds of boost. Guys don't roll around with that much boost normally. Would you use a GT45 on a 4.3 liter V6? Only if you wanted to get way up in the power level. Otherwise, I think a GT35 would probably serve that motor just fine. If it ran upside down dry bearings, but they shut off with the inertia switch though normally, Mark. What is this, like the American version of the 2JZ? Yeah, Jake, it is kind of. The only thing is it has more displacement and makes more NA power and has better head flow. Other than that, it's the same. But it has an aluminum block, so we don't know if the block will take as much power as the 2J iron block. I don't think that it will, but you know, we don't know. Todd Fulmer, my 6.6 liter made 681 NA at 7,500 with an Edelbrock Victor Junior heads. I'm using a Kong-ported Magnuson 2650 that we expected to make 22 pounds of boost. Should I expect 2.5 times NA with boost? No, you won't get that ever with a supercharger, because That supercharger at 22 pounds of boost on that motor is going to require almost 300 horsepower to spin. So you're going to be subtracting that away. Plus, you're going to be subtracting away the fact that at that boost level, the discharge temperature coming out of the blower is going to be, it's going to be 300 degrees. So let me know what happens when you run that. I'm curious to see. Kairos the Great, off the subject, and you can talk about any subject you want. Do you think that the Coyote swap versus a 464 valve justifies the cost or difference? What I would do, rather than, I would do boost on the 464 valve. So if you have a Cobra motor, just put a turbo or turbos on it, and you'll get all the power that you want. Dennis, what fuel injectors and pump would you recommend for a 5.3 pushing 20 pounds of boost E85 fuel? The 5.3, is it stock running 20 pounds? Is it a 400 horsepower run 20 pounds? Is it a 500 horsepower run running 20 pounds? You're gonna need something big. You're gonna need at least 80s and I think probably 1,000 cc's, and I wouldn't be afraid to go up to 1,500s with E85 on that combination. Jeremy, I was thinking of 862s. That's the same as a 706. Question unasked, but yet answered. No, I was just kidding on the 243s. If you have a 5.3, an 862 or 706 works good, especially in ported version or with a big valve upgrade. And that reminds me, I need to get back to the gentleman that supplied the big valve heads for the stuff that we did over Brian Tooley. I still haven't posted that video yet, and I will. But his big valve upgrade actually worked pretty well in improving the airflow and stuff on the 862s. But a fully ported set of 862s or 706s, like the stuff that we got from Brian when he was at Total Engine Airflow, or that we get now from Total Engine Airflow, those things work really, really well. The only thing that might be a little better than that, I mean, there are other guys that do that too. I don't want to take away from Texas Speed or Lingenfelter or any of the other places that do the porting. Theirs are, I'm sure, are very good as well. But the only thing better than that might be the TFS 205 head. You know, if you want to put a 243 on there, that will work also. We were talking about splitting hairs between those two. The head hasn't been sent out yet. They were supposed to pick it up today, but they didn't make it. So it probably won't go out till Monday. Marcus, I've never tried those. I've seen guys on the chassis dyno side have those electric pumps that make vacuum so that you can run, you know, big cams and stuff. I've never run one in practice, so I can't really comment on whether they work or not. Dark Blaze, what are your thoughts on the real potential of the GM Vortec 2200 LN2 that came in my Cavalier? I've never tested one, so I don't know that I can answer that. I plan to do something with it, like putting a sand rail that can handle 10 pounds of boost on the stock. The stock crank will not hurt. You won't hurt the stock crank with 10 pounds of boost. You won't hurt it with 20 pounds of boost. You won't hurt the block. The rod would probably be the first thing to go. Put ring gap in it. If this sounds familiar, it's the same with all motors. Put ring gap in it and put an intercooler on it, run good gas on it, make sure the tune's right, and you'll have nothing but fun with that. Mark wants me to show the difference between the exhaust ports. I can't do that because the other one has the exhaust manifold on it right now. Is the 4.8 smaller and lighter than a 5.3? No, they're the same. It has a slightly shorter stroke crank and a slightly longer rod. So it'd be interesting, and I'm going to do a video on balancing, like upgrading from a Gen 3 to a Gen 4. People want to know what the bob weights and all that stuff are, and if you need to rebalance it. And so that's one of the things I'm going to do. I'm going to weigh the 4.8 stuff and the 5.3 stuff to see if there's a difference. And then in addition to that, talk about the difference between the weights of the Gen 3 stuff and the Gen 4 stuff. And so it'll be kind of cool. Oh, it's a Barra plenum kit for fabbing one. So a custom intake manifold. What I need is that Tyler really is the flange that bolts to the head. That's what I would need, and we can make one because we can make it off of a drawing. Noodles, I get the 2 thumbs down too, but I totally count those. I'll follow up on header meth. Once some kind of game resolves it. Oh, it's an overtime. Yeah, you got to watch that. Yeah, David, for guys that are really putting the fuel to those things, they need the boost too, and they can make crazy power. I've been to a couple of the big like diesel dyno days, and it's it's insane. It's a lot of soot though. Jeremy, my 2500 6-liter was stage 2 BTR. Cam is amazing at 6 pounds on the street. Pro LS rotating kit on stock bore. Cool. Tips on tuner in 215. I don't know what that is, Jeremy. Oh, it's a beer. Okay. A hot mess 4.3-liter non-balance shaft 90-degree V6 do well with a pair of GT35s. A pair of GT35s would be 1,000 horsepower, so I don't know that you really need to try to get there on a 4.3-liter unless it's a real dedicated build. Brian, I'm happy you need to make it happen, man. Get an LS, cam springs, boost, and away you go. Would you recommend putting a 4200 in an RX-8 for drifting? I don't know. It's pretty tall. I'd like to see them in a lot of things, but I don't know that that's an ideal application for it. Okay, Tyler. I'm just learning about all this. It's Richard. It's an aluminum plenum with a base plate cut for Barra spacing, not specific to FG or anything. Find me on Facebook, message me, talk to Curtis Greenway, but I can send you some pictures. Okay, cool. Thanks, Tyler. Oh, an S366 turbo. That's about the right size for a 4200, I think. The balance shaft 262s can handle boost. I would think that they would. I like the one that I put together for my buddy. Has one in his boat, and he's driving it around now. And we ran the Torque Storm on it, and that worked really well. And we've run turbos on them, but we only ran them at like, between 400 and 500 horsepower, I think. How about a coil and wire testing with the 5.3 and an M122? The coil packs and plug wires, I don't think you'll see anything. I think the only time we ever see anything is when there's misfire. And as long as we can adjust the dwell for the coils, that seems to work fairly well. And I've never had a problem with plug wires unless we burned one or broke one. Shadow Ops wants to eventually step up to the S480 turbo on the 4200. That's a real turbo. Calvin, let's see. He's gonna throw some wisdom here. I have rumors that the Atlas block is made from T6 aluminum, which is what they use in the LS9 blocks. Nice. So maybe the blocks will take some snot. Nice. I think it would require an upgraded girl, though. I don't know. I mean, I saw pictures of the girdle, and I talked to Jerry about that too. I just don't know. I don't know that we need to worry about the crank, and I don't know that we need to worry about the block until we get really, really high. And you and I talked about that too, Calvin. It'd be interesting. So you want to do a billet main girdle? Admiral, so what cheap turbo am I looking to support? 1200 horsepower on a single setup. An S480 will do that. James, I don't know of anybody who has a CNC program for the 4200. Maybe somebody should develop that. Maybe Calvin can shoot them over like, you know, a half a dozen or a dozen or so heads, and they can kind of start the program going. Let's see, Christopher, stock Smog 350 Ols, single turbo, 100% stock. If that motor's 100% stock, it's not really going to make very much power then. Keith has a cam question. Good. It's already, we know it's the wrong cam, right? Oh, and I don't even have the right shirt on. So I got the wrong cam and the wrong shirt. TSP 228, 234. Okay, 620, 600. 113 plus 2 on an LQ4. Any idea on power band running? Well, the turbo is not going to make any difference on the power band unless you have a rising boost curve. If we assume that the rest of the motor is the truck manifold and the truck heads like 317, that cam is going to peak at 6,000, let's say. And so, you know, you can run it beyond that, but it's going to be falling off in power. And if you add the same amount of boost, the curve is going to look exactly the same. If you have a rising boost curve, you can have it rev out farther, and it will still rev out farther. It's just that you'll hit the peak power before that. Are 4.2 mains cross bolted? I don't know, Mark, if you're out there, are these things? No, I don't think that they are. They don't. It doesn't appear to be. He must protect Richard at all costs. I didn't know that I was in danger. AJ, I don't know why Ford did the dual throttle body. That's probably just the truck engineers wanting to be different than the car guys. It could be something as simple as that. I'm hoping that there's more to it than that. But they use that, I think, on the 460 as well, because they used it on the, I think that they used it on the 5 liter and the 5.8 and the 460. So they kind of used it for everything. Maybe they saw the dual throttle body on like Cobra stuff and the stuff that was upcoming, and they thought, oh yeah, that's really cool. We got to do that on ours. What time is it? Right now it's getting close to 8 o'clock. Brian, do you sell parts at your shop? I don't have a shop. I'm just testing here at Westech. Yeah, everybody, stop what you're doing. Hit that like button. Come on, you're killing me. Let's see. Yeah, there's a 4200 wiki. I think Calvin did that. So go take a look over there. If you have questions on the 4200, there's lots of good stuff. And hopefully before long, I'm going to have this thing up on the dyno. Arizona's in the house. Will a turbo spec cam make more power than an NA cam on a turbo motor? No, it won't. It will if that. And so you can't say a turbo spec cam versus an NA cam. Just think about it like this. One cam is bigger than the other. So if you have a turbo spec cam that's 220 at 50 on the intake, and you have an NA cam that's 205, then the turbo cam will make more power because it's going to make more power NA. But if one of them is a 210 and the other one is a 225, the 225 cam is going to make more power NA, and then it's going to make more power at any given boost level. The LN2 has a cast iron block, so it should handle the power. The rods are weak from the research I've seen, but the same wrist pin height and bore as the Honda J35. People worry about a lot of things and they read a lot of things on the internet. You should put ring gap in your motor. You should put an intercooler on it. You should put boost on it. You should put E85 in it, and you should have the tune right. And trust me, lots and lots of good things will happen. Okay, Jeremy. Yeah, I didn't know what that was. I have had problems with oil with filters. We've actually blown some filters off of some motors. They were clogged, and so it blew the filter apart. And I've had, from changing the oil, I've had it change the pressure as well, and that was on an LS. I haven't run any of the Chrysler 2.5s or 2.2s on the dyno yet. Ever want to test any of these newer turbos, Azana, G Series, EFR? Yeah, I could, but again, really the size of the turbo relative to the power output of the NA motor is kind of the determining factor. That's the big thing. That's the big part of it. And then obviously making sure the tune is right and making sure the intercooler keeps everything cool and that you have E85 and you've tuned it properly. And then going to different turbos with different wheel designs or things, then that raises it up another whatever amount. But it's not the big gain that you get from the turbo. That's like the big gain like this, and then there's a little bit more because we changed the style of the turbo. Maybe it goes down too. But you know, all the turbo guys want to say that theirs is the best because they're trying to sell turbos. We just want to make more power, and we want to do it cheaply. Tristan, I'm honestly in this to see how high a 4200 can go before the valve train can't keep up. I think that's not going to be the issue with this motor. I think you put valve spring in it. I'm told that the RPM potential of the valve train is very, very high. And in looking at it for the first time now, I can see why. Darren, we have plenty of 1,000 horsepower turbos for the 4200. Yeah, Woody's Nova says that in the 4.3 liter V6, the crank will break unless you get a forged steel one. Because it's a split pin, I think, on that 4.3, and it's not terribly strong. So it's, you know, I think that is kind of a weak link. But also I wouldn't take my information from Freiberger and Finnegan on why that thing broke, because they break a lot of stuff. Norfolk and Wayne, let's see. I don't think you'll have an issue with the engine under 700 horsepower. I don't think we'd have a problem with this thing at 700 horsepower. I think that's going to be 14 pounds of boost, I think, or so. I think that'll be pretty easy. Happy Friday. Bob, for a mild 454 with an 80 millimeter turbo, unless you're trying to max out the turbo, we've run stock exhaust manifolds on a lot of stuff like that. Curtis, thanks for giving me all that information on your 454. Unfortunately, you didn't give me the duration on the camshaft. That's kind of what I need to determine how much power that is. Let's see. I think Mark was talking about injector size here. As soon as I move something, everything goes crazy. Yeah, we were just talking about it. In fact, I was talking to Eric about it, that that's the motor that needs to be in the Jeep. Let's see, test the stock engine until there's an issue. I know the complementary guys would go through main bearings until they added a secondary main girdle. Okay, cool. Yeah, they're revving to 10,000 RPM. That's like scary RPM. Yeah, Norfolk, that's what everybody tells us about the issue with these is the torsional stress on this crank. Maybe a small diameter flywheel and getting the dampener up, the dampener size up. Yeah, I think the dampener needs to be tuned for a different frequency, and that's probably what we'll do. I don't think we're going to change the size of the flywheel, though. Right now, we actually have a flex plate on it, and that's what we're using. But I probably will go with a flywheel once we start making lots of power. Yes, I'm on the West Coast, so it's coming up on 8 o'clock. Yeah, the W41 Olds, the Quad 4 was 190 horsepower, and I thought that I read that they had a 195 horsepower version of one too. Nick is saying that they actually use A356 cast with lost foam. Same as the cylinder heads, the LS9 block isn't a lost foam cast engine. Shots fired. Rick, you're so lucky you get to use West Tech as much as you do. You have a picture of Steve with a donkey hat. I do have a picture of Steve. As a matter of fact, I have video of Steve in a wig, which is awesome. He was a great sport for doing. He was doing a video with us when I was doing that show with Chad. We can't see you, Eric. Don't worry. What about valve train mods on the Atlas? Eventually, it's going to twist in the high RPM to get some big power. I don't think that. I think all we need to do is put the right valve springs on it and the right cams, and I think that that's probably enough for the RPM range that we're going to run. Let's see, Mustang Crazy on a big block combination. How do you determine the use of a 4150 or 4500 flange single plane? If you're up above 600 horsepower, a 4500 is probably going to help you. And if you're 700 or 800 horsepower, it's definitely going to help you. Even if you have 1,000 CFM 4150, I've done lots of tests. As a matter of fact, if you take a look at the 415 stroker LS3 base motor that I did all of the LS3 carbureted tests on, you'll see we ran the 4150 flange Super Victor and the 4500 Super Victor, and the 4500 made more power, and the 4500 flange with a 4150 didn't make as much power as it did with the 4500, but it still made more than the 4150 combination. So it likes that bigger manifold. Yeah, Mike, they might have gone to 10,000, but I don't think the average guy is going to be able to do that. Phil, can you use a stroker crank and a 5.3 and still use stock bore pistons? Yes, you can. I would like to have Steve in at chat, and I probably will do interviews with him because he's got a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, Norfolk, the chain might be an issue. I don't know anything about the strength of the chains on these things. Yeah, some of the different filters take the pressure more than others. Richard, what do you think of eBay turbos? Obviously, I like them. I use them all the time. I have lots and lots of experience with them. Like I said, the CX Racing stuff, the DNA stuff, we've used lots of them. Todd, man, why do I keep losing somebody as soon as I'm trying to move this? Mark, we did that last night. We showed the MS Pro and the harness last night. I did a unboxing. How about some nitrous hits with a 4.8 and an M122 supercharger? We've run that before, and it works. Okay, yeah, the final Roman, the old 442 had a 195 for 1 year. Okay, I thought that I remembered that. Yeah, Keith, I don't know without knowing the duration on the camshaft, because the lift tells me nothing. You can have a 600 lift that's only 210 degrees of duration, although it would be, that would be odd. But, you can have a broad range of duration that can change the power by 50 horsepower or 100 horsepower, depending on where the duration numbers are. Yeah, Mike, we don't plan on lingering in the danger zone, although in the dyno, it is going to sweep through that RPM. The one thing that we might do if we think that there is a danger zone, if we're trying to go past it, is that we can change the rate of acceleration on the dyno and run it at 400 RPM per second or 600 RPM per second, so it doesn't stay at that thing for very long. David, can you elaborate on oil systems versus RPM and some of these builds? The best thing to talk about there are big blocks, because those are the ones that we normally have a problem with. The LS stuff actually works fairly well, at least the way that we run it on the dyno, because it's stationary. And the biggest problem is when you get oil slosh and you have a problem with on some of these with oil drain back too. Yeah, Steve is definitely the go-to guy for big block stuff. Who can make camshafts for the 4200? The guys from Snyder can regrind cams, and Comp can also do that, obviously. Let's see. Here we go. Chris, I'm 2 cocktails deep and late. Do you have cam specs on you're going to do for the... We only have the stock cams right now. Stewart's firing shots. You know what solves the 4200 crank harmonics? Running the 3700 5-cylinder. Video quality is excellent tonight. Yeah, I tuned it up a little bit. If it's good, I just take credit for it. And if it's not, then I don't. Can you even get a GT45 anymore? Yeah, just go online and type GT45, and then about 1,000 of them will come up. Although I don't know about supply now. Supply is really tough. A Summit Stage 218, 327, 525 lift. I'm sure that that's 227. Why would you put 1.8 rockers on? Oh, Oz, man. Come on, it's you again. I bet they're stainless rockers too. A 218, 227 cam. Just take a look at the BTR stuff. What is that about? A stage 3 or stage 2 cam? What's the diameter of the exhaust port? That would help with setting the header tube diameter. We use 1 3/4 headers, if that helps. I don't have anything to measure that now. That's the intake side though. Is that JFR cam and ISKI cam? I don't know who does them for JFR. I do have some Borg Warner turbos. I have a couple of S475s and an S480. Ooh, Bahama Mama. Why am I? Oh, here we go. Got to plug in. There we go. Daniel says he's got a company down in Bradenton, Florida that could regrind the cams. Cool. We have one that's close. They're right here in San Diego. What would your turbo recommendation be for a 6.6 681 NA horsepower to make 1700? If you did twins, then the twin S475s like we ran on the Big Bang 6-liter would be good because they'll go to 2000, and 1700 would really still be in the sweet spot. For a single, you're going to have something big. You're going to have a, I don't know, a 91 or 96 or something. Woody's, hey Richard, why don't they use a tighter center line on the ALOS engine? Seems like it's hard to find a 110 or a 108. I would like that torque to come up on quicker. The reason that most guys don't do that is because of the idle quality goes away, and then also piston to valve goes away with that too. New episode, Let's Talk Tech, a big block featuring guest appearance by Steve Brule. The problem is it's too late. Steve's gone. He's not going to stay here late to talk to me. He might stay to talk to you guys, but certainly not to me. Are you planning on running the VVT on the exhaust side for testing? Yeah, we're going to have the VVT hooked up. I want to have it hooked up on this one, and if we do the Barra, I also want to have it hooked up on that. Oh, David, so you want to talk about setting bearing clearances and pumps and, okay. Let's see. Worried about rust inside an engine always is coated in oil. But it's not coated in oil. If you take a look at, if you let a motor sit for a long time, you can get rust in the cylinders, even though they were at one time coated with oil, but all of that stuff goes away. Yeah, Jack, I'm excited about getting this thing running too. I just want to hear it make noise. A hot mess. I don't know which one. I think it's a 300 BR-14, but just if you put those numbers in or you look at something like that under the comp deal, it will come up. Elite, you can run 100 shot on any turbo, so you can certainly do it on that GT45. And a GT45 with 100 shot on a small block 350 should easily run 11.0. As a matter of fact, you should have trouble not going under that. I have tried different turbos, but not different brands of exactly the same turbo, because I don't know that that exists. A pair of Garrett GT45s would be a lot. Any plans with the Gen 2 LT4 heads? May 27th, I have my 3.3 LT4, 12-to-1 compression, 236, 244 cam, dyno tested, hoping for 500 horsepower. A 383 with that much cam and that head, if you have a good intake manifold, should make 500. It should be over that. Especially if are the heads ported? Rick wants an update on the 292 turbo. It's not back together yet. I think that the AMERI-BARRA would be easier to put in the Nova than the Barra would, but because I don't know what trans, somebody let me know what trans I can run with the Barra. I think that they had T5s available on them if you had the right bell housing. Stuart, I've never tried to max out a 32 valve Navigator motor, but we ran 7,000 pretty easily on those when we were doing the testing. The 1.8 rockers might help you make a little bit more power than the cam does with the 1.7 rocker. We saw that when we did the testing. The milder the cam, the more the rockers tend to help. Like on a stock one, they picked up power, but again, we ran into valve float. On the LS9 cam or LS7 cam, when we went from 1.7 rockers to 1.8 rockers, it helped power. So they might help power on your application. It's not going to be a lot. It's going to be 5 or 10. I don't know what the weight is on the 4200. That 768 of the tire is a lot in a Nova. Bob, I have not done a magazine story in a really long time now. Yeah, Steve, if the LT4 heads are ported, 500 horsepower should not be a problem at all with that combination. The octagon, yeah. Right now, if you take a look above, it's called the polygraph room because a lot of people, it definitely makes you tell the truth. Cam duration is 300, 308. Is that must be the advertised duration. Ben and Jake, are you going to be running a different harmonic balancer? Yeah, we may try that. If we really want to go up in power, we may do all of that stuff. A crank girdle, I don't think I'm going to change the crank girdle. I'll look at it when we take it apart and see if it's something that can be easily made. Otherwise, we probably won't do that. Maybe that will be the limit. Yeah, Stuart, you need a valve spring upgrade if you're going to run at that RPM because if you want it to make power up there, you're going to have to put cams in it to make power up there. The stock cams won't make power up there. What bar map sensor is required for the M122 supercharger? It depends on how much boost you want to run. We only ran about, I think, 10 pounds or something like that. So that's a 2-bar map sensor. Yeah, Daniel, and the problem with putting a high rocker ratio on a mild cam profile is that you kind of exaggerate the ramp rate. You add mass to the rocker, which is not good, and a high lift for a low duration, equates to a lot of ramp rate. Although maybe it's better with doing that with a rocker and not doing it with a cam lobe, but I still think it's problematic. Which is why you typically see, longer duration and higher lift stuff kind of go together. Flexall, what's the timeline for this testing? I don't know which testing you're talking about. We talk about a bunch of different motors here. When is an aftermarket harmonic balancer necessary? I should have brought you in. Stay here, guys. I'll be right back. So I've wanted to do a video on this stuff. So here's what happens when you don't pick a good balancer. This one is a multi-piece. It's supposed to all be together. This, as you can see, is supposed to go in here. You can see the bonding material there. It's supposed to go in there. And it's supposed to stay in there. And then this is actually supposed to kind of hold it in place, like it's all supposed to go like that. The problem is this center one spun inside the outer one. Not good. So, I mean, we all want inexpensive stuff, but that's a good example of where when you pick a cheap dampener instead of an ATI or something that we know works, that can ruin your day. If it just slips a little bit, then you have a different timing mark now. So now you're trying to adjust your timing based on a mark that might be 5, 10, 20 degrees off or more. If it spins all the way around, you have no idea where it is. So that can be problematic. And then when it spins a lot, then it creates all kinds of problems because that is that one's actually adjustable because it can be I think that one might have been a Ford. So it could have been neutral, it could have been 28, or it could have been 50, depending on what weight you bolted to it. So, you know, it could have been all kinds of problematic. Ben Jake, BHJ 4200 balancer. That's the one that most of the 4200 guys tend to go with, or that Mark and those guys are all kind of recommending. Let's see, Chris, ideas for a 300 turbo size and cam for stock internals, possibly going to 76 F-150. It always depends on what kind of power level that you want. And a GT35 is going to be your 550 horsepower turbo, and a GT45 is going to be your 700. For that motor, a GT35 probably is going to work fairly well. Stop making videos and get the 4200 dynoed. You're getting bad as head bite sporting guy who got years behind in customers' work. Yeah, I don't have customers' work, so I'm good. Do you think that the new LT engines will replace the LS and hot rodding? I think that they're really, really good. It's just going to take all of us learning more and, you know, ratcheting up our game to embrace the new technology and stuff. Right now, I don't see it in the immediate future because the junkyards are full of LS motors and they're easy to go get and they make lots of power. And they're easier to work with. So if that continues and there continues to be a supply of them, that will be the go-to thing more than the LT stuff. Yeah, fluid dampeners are not cheap, but they are good stuff though. Yeah, a Barra with a T56 would kind of be cool, or a TR6060. Mike, Richard, have you seen the tests where they found like 7 degrees of deflection on the snout of the LS with the stock dampener? So the crank was twisting 7 degrees? That seems like a lot. We're going to run the 4200 with a stock dampener to begin with. We may upgrade to something else if we do a double wazoo one, but when we're doing a single wazoo, I would just run the stock one. The new L8T block is better than the LSX block. Fight me. I guess maybe those are fighting words. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know. It's supposed to be really good. And again, if we made 1540 with a stock like nothing junkyard 250,000 mile LY6 block, and it's still alive and running to this day, then, you know, how much more block strength do you need? Of course, I don't think I'd ever run that motor at 1500 horsepower in a car because as Freiberger says, I don't want to drive over the crankshaft. But maybe it would work. I mean, there are guys out there running crazy power with the stock bottom end stuff. So you want to flip every other piston? That'll be good. What's a safe PSI for stock LS1? It depends on the tune and the fuel, but you could probably get away with 7 pounds, maybe 10. Yeah, 1.5 Wazoo. That's really the kind of no man's land. That's the gray area. Does anybody do O-ring head gaskets anymore, or multi-layer gasket superior? I don't know. The guys that are making really crazy boost and crazy power still do that. They still do a lot of them will do a copper head gasket and then an O-ring, and they'll insert it. But I've never done that, and I don't know that I've ever gotten to the limit of an MLS gasket and the stuff that I do. But you know, guys that are running 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds of boost, maybe they do. Maybe they need that thing to do what the you know, inserted O-ring does. I'm just not at that level. If you flip the pistons, don't the rods hit the valves? It'd be really hard for a rod to hit the valve. If the rod hits the valve, that means the piston's not there anymore. Mike, I have a sleeved 5.3 Gen 4. When do you think the block will be tapped out? I think it could. Yeah, I think guys are trying to run up near 2,000 horsepower with the sleeve stuff. A junkyard LS with a turbo probably would make more than that. Well, it certainly can make more than that 700 horsepower at the wheel, or 768 at the wheel big block. But what happens if you added boost to your big block? Top fuel hoops. Yep, those are guys do that. Tom's out. Tom, before you go, if you haven't gone, we'll do a box opening with your stuff tomorrow. Because Tom sent something that's really cool, and you guys will like it, and hopefully, I will ruin the internet again if we if we do a video on it. Yep, pistons hit the valves. In the test that I'm running, that won't be an issue because we'll do it with a stock cam, so we have plenty of piston to valve clearance. And I think I can't swear, but I think that the piston that's in there might be a 4 eyebrow piston, anyways. Oh, cool, Steven, a Y block F100. That'll be cool. Mike, so what do you think about a twin scroll Gen 3 7875 for the 4200, Viron's biggest housing? I don't think it needs it for what we're doing. I think that the Gen 2 7875 that I already have, since I already have it, is probably a better choice. I don't think we're going to get to the point where I need to go from what I have to what that is. I have a T6 S475, and then we also have an S480 that's a T4. So I think we have more than enough turbo for what we would want to do, and certainly for what we're going to do this time. If we get it all running and get the turbo on there, we're not going to go all the way up because it still is an unopened motor, and we're not going to go crazy boost on it. Daniel is new to the channel. Where are you located? We're in California. Are sodium-filled valves a cool idea for turbo boost on an LS? You can use them. Most people don't. Tom, I would like to run a twin scroll. Not the turbo so much. We've run lots of twin scroll turbos housings, but I've never run dedicated Y pipe into the twin scrolls. Daniel Westek is in Miraloma. And I used to live in Anaheim. We used to watch the Disneyland fireworks from our backyard. $60 piston ring kit and a 2.5 price for turbo. Mismatched the pin locks because the kit ones that heat treat, 2 got snap locks, 1 got an OEM 1989, last one got best from the kit. There's not going to be a lot of load on the lock, because you should be fine. Yeah, Tom, we'll get you taken care of. So we'll show everybody, and then we'll ruin the internet again. It'll be fun. Can you run twin turbos on a complete stock engine and tune? Yeah, the turbos, whether there's 1 or 2 doesn't make any difference. It's going to be the amount of boost that you run and how much power and how their cooling is and the tune and all that. I plan running low teens and boost on the slant 6, the 340 valve springs. I don't know on the slant 6. I don't know exactly what the spring rate is on the 340. I know that that's the go-to spring rates for guys that put small cams in them. I think it would work, especially if you have a mild camshaft in it and you're not running a lot of RPM. I think you'd be fine. But I don't know, because I don't know exactly what that spring rate is. Daniel, I got something that's really off the wall for you. Do you believe that all engine parts are universal, or do you think they're all specific? I don't know what the question is. They're specific to what engine they can go on. Does the exhaust side of the cylinder head also dictate the power potential? Yeah, you can ruin the head with bad exhaust flow. Can Gen 4 rods handle 1,200 horsepower? Mike, come on, you're not new to the channel. The Gen 4 rods and Gen 4 pistons and Gen 4 crank did 1,500. So that's not a problem. Let's see, were those EV1 or EV6 injectors with the M122 billet fuel rails? I think you could put either one in there, because isn't the EV are an EV1 and EV6 different? They're different length, right? They might be able to answer that. I don't know which ones. They were a standard Bosch length. They were the same length as what you'd find in a 5-liter Mustang. So whatever that is, it's probably a 6. Yeah, I don't have any H22s, Tom, but we are going to do a Y pipe for the LS. That's the easiest way for me to do it. Yeah, 1,200 wheel horsepower on a stock rod is a lot, but because we've done that 70, 80 pulls in a row, I don't think it's hard. And we did that on Gen 3 rods. So on Gen 4 rods, we have lots and lots of pulls that are in that range. If I have a running engine, can I donate it to the channel? What is the engine? Richard, what do you know about the old Can-Am engines? Did you see the picture of the Hillborn stack injection that Freiberger had on the big block over here? I know that I like them. I've read a lot of books about the Can-Am stuff, because I'm a real big fan of that. Would you take a piston from a Ford or an LS that has a bigger skirt and stick it in a Hemi with the same bore and make it work? I don't know if the pin placement is going to work. I mean, the pin diameter and the rod and all that stuff is going to work. If the piston itself will fit, it doesn't make any difference that it came from an LS or a Ford. but the valve angle could be different, so the valve relief could be wrong. You know, like I said, you've got to match it to the rod length, the big end width. There's a lot of things that go on there that make it decide whether it's going to fit or not. The pigtail doesn't matter. You can adapt the pigtail to whatever you want. Straining TV, what's going on? Richard, do you think the engine dyno load is more or less than the track load? The dyno load is much more than a track load. The track load you never see, for one thing, you never see a stationary load like the way that we initially load the motor. So the motor never sees that on the track or on the road or anywhere. It only sees that on the dyno. And also, if you look at it, if you have a turbo LS and you're running in a car, you're at wide open throttle for, I don't know, let's say 10 seconds or less. A dyno run takes a lot longer than 10 seconds. And we're loading it differently, though, because we're loading it at a fixed RPM rate, but we're loading it from a low engine speed to the high engine speed, whereas in a track, you're loading it only initially on the line, but then it's going up very quickly through the RPM range, much faster than we do on the dyno, and it's doing it in different gears. Only in the higher gear will you see any sort of extended time, and so it's only doing that kind of load for an extended period of time, you know, for a few seconds maybe. So I think that the dyno is actually harder on it than the track is. It's just that it's not shifting. The final hybrid eutectic pistons are not, they don't break from boost, they break from detonation. So if you keep the detonation away, then they'll last. What time's, okay, we got 3.3 minutes. So, Norfolk, so your math is saying that an inch and 1.75 tube header will peak torque at 5,000 RPM. Did you use any length to determine that? And at 8 PSI, it will be 3,300 RPM. That won't happen in real life. So where the motor makes peak power is going to be a function of primary length more than diameter. I know that you're checking the flow rate based on pressure and temperature, but that's not what we see when we test it, though. Puerto Rico's in the house. Would you ever show the dyno load settings? Like what do you want to see? You know what what we're testing at, right? We're testing at 300 RPM per second. So the length doesn't matter on an NA combination. So primary length doesn't change where the motor makes peak power. Hey, Richard, what's the safest and cheapest way to run timing on a boosted engine with a distributor? You change the timing by rotating the distributor, but finding out what that is going to be real application specific, and not just the motor itself, but also the static compression and the head design and the vehicle that you're putting in it and the weight and the gearing. And there's lots of stuff that go into that. Usually experience is the best thing. Having a knock sensor would be awesome. But a lot of motors don't have that unless they're brand new ones. And we never have one either. So we kind of err on the side of not having very much timing at all and then kind of sneak into it. Okay, Norfolk, if you're telling me that changing the length of the the primary length of a header doesn't change the RPM. I don't agree with that, because I've tested it and we know that it changes it, just like the primary, just like the runner length on an intake manifold changes where the motor wants to make power. Changing the primary length also does that. Because I've run lots of adjustable headers and it does exactly that. It's on the header side, it's not nearly as dramatic as the runner length on the intake side does. Steve, what would a 2.5-inch header collector do compared to a 3-inch? It will change things, and also the length of that collector will also change things, and then also the length of the pipe after the collector extension definitely has an effect on that. But I can't give you a universal thing. We have tested those, but it makes a difference on what combination we test it on. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does nothing. It does very little. Sometimes it does a lot. What horsepower and torque goals do you have for the 4200? I don't have any goals for it. We just want to see what it will do. We want to run it NA and see what it does, and then we want to add boost and see what it does. I'm not trying to break the bank or anything. This is all. A lot of times people get this stuff confused with and this is especially true of guys that are engine builders. So they want to build an engine and they're trying to get, I want the most power that I could possibly get out of it, and they think that's what I do, and that they think that they're competing against that. And that's not what I do. I'm not trying to get the most power out of anything. What I'm doing is showing, here's what happens when you do this. Like, here's what happens when you do this cam versus this cam. I'm not telling you that those are the best cams and that those cams make the most power. What I'm saying is a different thing than what those guys do. Guys that do dyno testing and build drag race motors, they only have one train of thought. I'm making as much power as I can. And if you're on the dyno, you must be trying to make as much power as you can. And if I made more than you, then I must be better. That's just silly. So when I do an intake test, I'm not telling you that this one's better. I'm just telling you, when you run this one, it does this. When you run this one, it does this. And then therefore you get to choose between those two things. Same thing with cams or turbos or whatever it is that we're doing. I don't care about what power we make. Until we build something where we're trying to turn it up and see where it will go. I'm curious about that stuff, because that will kind of be cool. Longer primary length tends to move power down, just like with longer runner intakes. Mike, I've never run a filled block before. I know guys do that in drag racing to make the block stronger. Steve, we do the live feeds almost every night. We like Oliver. He's British, though. I like the 413 cross ram deals. I really love to test one of the ultra long runner ones. We had the guys from West Tech had a customer here, ran those, and he had like a 500-inch stroker 440 base motor that he ran it on, and he ran those on there. And I think that the thing made peak torque about 2,000 RPM, because they kept turning it down lower and lower and lower to try to find where peak torque was. And I think they eventually got down around 2,000 RPM, because it's about, I think that it was about 3 feet of runner length when we measured it. It was a lot. It was kind of cool. Jeremy, there might be some formulas for figuring out radiator and airflow and stuff. I don't know what they are, though. Stuart, happy to help. Yeah, there were 2 versions. There was a short ram and a long ram version of that. And then they also had what guys call the cross ram, which is basically a really, really short one, just kind of right, inside the valve cover area, more like the cross ram, like on a, the Hemis had those, but the cool ones were the ones that went all the way over the valve covers. Any OE hydraulic roller small block Chevy cams? I do have some. I have some mild ones. Never done a test on a CID intake. Go make some noise with the 05. I do need to. Are you going to run the 4200 on HP tuners? No, we're going to run it on Megasquirt. Yeah, 413, 426. Yeah, we're not gonna run it on a. I don't do tuning with the factory ECU. I only do it with the and probably Eric is going to do it with the Megasquirt, at least to begin with. Yeah, I've seen the Speeduino, but I already have the Megasquirt. They already sent it. So thank you for the guys at Megasquirt. That's awesome. And Mark for supplying the harness for that. Here's the harness Mark wanted me to show. I'm running over my turbo. We showed this last night also, but this is the harness we'll be using. See, look, he labeled it all. So we can just hit, and he already ran the Megasquirt and this harness on his truck with a 4200 in it. So it's already basically ready to start. So if we could put it on there and it all goes on, and it should, because he's done a good job marking everything for us. So we put it on there and it has a program in it that allows us to start it, and it's just tuning from there, then that will be really, really nice. John's out. The lame cross ram was that 1982 305 dual TBI. Actually, I saw one of those, the L83. It was in a Corvette. The cross ram, the Crossfire deal on the 84 Corvette. So it was there's one at the wrecking yard, and I really, really wanted it while I was standing in line. Oh, another cool thing happened before I sign off, and then I got to get going. I saw that cross ram there, and I wanted that. And while I was standing in line to get this 05 motor, there was a guy off to the side, and he had a motor that he had taken out. And I looked over, I'm like, that thing looks like, is that what I think it is? And I walked over there, and it had the W-shaped valve covers. The guy found like a 348. I don't think it was a 409, but I think he found a 348 truck motor, a big block Chevy, the W deal, which is really cool. And I'd never seen one in a wreck yard. And I walked over, dude, man, how did you find this? He goes, yeah, you got to be here at the right time. I'm like, dude, that is an awesome score. And it was from a manual. It still had the clutch on it and everything. So it was kind of super, super cool. So while I was standing in line, I saw two other things that I really wanted, like that W motor would be cool, because I've never seen one in a wrecking yard. And I think that they may have run some here at West Tech, but I wasn't involved in any of that. So very cool stuff. So thank you guys for showing up. I will be back tomorrow. I can get to work now and see if I can get this, now that I'm done with the doing the compression test on the Dodge, I can get this one off of the dyno stand and set it down, because they're going to pick that up on Monday, and get the other one up and get it up on the dyno. Hopefully, I'm hoping we can make some runs tomorrow. That would be awesome. Thanks for showing up, guys. I will see you all tomorrow. Dance into the intro music.